the vast majority of people, it's innocent. They don't really mean any, they're not trying to steal people's content or any harm. They just don't know, right?
Hi, I'm Terrell Turner, the host of the Business Talk Library, and today I have a special guest on that is coming from a legal background, and I think that is very important for all of the entrepreneurs and business leaders because that's a part of your business that you don't always think about, and most people are not prepared to be able to handle that themselves. So, Curt, thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, you're welcome, Terrell. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now, Curt, we know that your background is legal, so tell us what's a little bit about like your professional background before you decided to start your own firm.
Yeah, definitely. So, a little bit of my background. So I grew up in California and I went to school. I did my undergrad at BYU and I studied chemical engineering and computer science. And so I have a little bit of a background in tech. Once I graduated from college, I worked for a little bit at a startup doing mobile app development. And then I went to law school. And in law school, I focused on intellectual property law. And it's kind of a subset of business law. And it has a little bit of, you kind of need more of a technical background to work in that space. And so my background in tech kind of inspired that a little bit to go transition into that. And so graduated from law school recently, and then I've since decided to open up my own law firm, and I focus primarily on intellectual property law, but a little bit of touches on a little bit of business law in general as well. And so my focus is kind of on that area.
Gotcha. Now, I think that's a unique background because not a lot of people can say that they actually worked in the field or worked in tech or worked in business before going to law school like you.
Yeah.
So
no, definitely.
What made you want to go that route? I mean, what made you make that switch to say, you know what, I've worked in tech, but I want to go back to law school?
Yeah, it was something that I kind of always had in the back of my mind going to college and when I was trying to figure out a career path. But what I like about what I do is it's I get to work with a lot of creative people, like inventors and authors and people that are creating things, right? And that's what I like about it, because I don't necessarily consider myself like a super creative person, but it always intrigues me when people when people are really artistic and creative. I like I'm fascinated with what people come up with, and being able to work with those people every day is what kind of motivated me to go that route. So.
Awesome. And I think that's a very important one because, as from a finance standpoint, when working with building forecasts for companies, and especially when it comes down to the tech space, it's like, if you can't protect, what makes your business special, then it makes it really difficult to really see what's the long-term financial viability of this if you can't protect it.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah.
Now, tell us a little bit about, your firm and just kind of, what that experience has been like in starting your own firm.
Yeah. So part of what motivated me was when I was working at another smaller firm before, and the work we did was really focused on individual, a lot of entrepreneurs and people that were starting new businesses. And there were a lot of some of the, the same problems that kept coming up and the same challenges and difficulties that they were facing. And a lot of the way I saw we handled the work, it was just, there was a lot of inefficiencies and kind of problems that weren't easy to solve, especially in the legal industry. I mean, it's traditionally been a very, you've got really big law firms that kind of, have really big serve really big companies and clients. And so if you're a really big company, you can afford to have, access to attorneys to help you with your issues, right? But the challenge I was seeing was more and more, I feel like people are starting their own businesses or, small businesses. We're getting a lot more entrepreneurs, but there's not the same access to that legal, advice or help. And it's almost always one of the first things that kind of gets cut, right? If you're trying to be lean as you're starting up, it's like, well, you got to pick and choose the things that you invest in. And for a lot of people, it's like, I just can't justify that, right? So I'm going to try to do it on my own. And so what I've really tried to do with my own firm is to solve some of these, inefficiencies or these problems, come up with good solutions where these entrepreneurs and these small business owners can get the same, access to legal help, but it fits within their, their budget. It makes sense from their perspective to invest in something like that.
Okay. So what do you say to entrepreneurs when they talk about that? They say, okay, all right, I have this great idea, this great product, and I have all these things that I could spend my money on, but I don't really have room for, legal expenses. Like, what would be kind of your feedback you would give to them about that technology?
Yeah, definitely. And it depends on, it really depends on the particular technology or the invention or the creation, right? There are a lot of different ways that you can handle that. But I'd say there really are affordable ways to go about protecting your intellectual property, right? For example, just with patents, if it's a patent, those traditionally are very expensive and a very long and drawn out process. But for example, you can invest in what's called a provisional patent that will give you a more limited scope of protection, but it's a lot more affordable, right? And so that's just an example, but there are ways to kind of tailor your approach or your strategy so that it fits within, the constraints of a particular budget. And so that's what I really try to help people with, is come up with a really good, solid plan so that you're not going at it blindly, right? You're not just throwing money because somebody told you or you think that's the what you need, right? That you're really, you're doing it strategically so that it makes sense, that you're investing in something that's really gonna be able to generate a return for you.
Okay. Because I think that's something that a lot of entrepreneurs are very unsure on. Like they want to protect their business. They're not sure like what route to go, what strategy to take. Because, have you seen, are there any, like, I guess you say, rule of thumb approaches to like, when do you need to start thinking about, doing a trademark? Or, hey, when is a patent, like, I guess a good idea? Or what route? Are there any rules of thumb to approaching that?
Yeah, for sure. And patents are tricky because they're a little unique. There are certain the laws surrounding patents, and they're really complicated. But if you're not careful, you could potentially lose your rights to get a patent if you're not very careful about timing for when you file for a patent and what you're able to disclose before you file for a patent, things like that. But for trademarks, for example, a good rule of thumb I'd say is so trademarks protect, basically you can think of them as like protection for your brand, right? So your identity in the marketplace for your goods and services. So for example, a trademark really derives its value through the underlying business, right? And so if you're just starting up a business and you're brand new and you haven't even really made any sales necessarily, you're just barely getting started, it's a good idea to definitely address trademarks, but you might be a little early at that point to start, filing a bunch of trademarks, because they're really only as valuable as the underlying business, right? And if you're just getting started as a business, that trademark isn't going to hold nearly as much value as it will maybe a year or two down the road once you've generated some revenue for the business. Now you're growing. So that's something to consider with trademarks, is it ultimately its value is directly proportional to the underlying business. So you want to start thinking about it when you've kind of, gotten your business established, and you're at a point where it's worth, investing in protecting that as a business asset.
Okay, awesome. So now with your firm, what are I know you've alluded to it some, but what are the services that companies can hire your firm for?
Yeah, so we do trademark registration. So like a federal trademark registration for a brand, especially if if you sell throughout the United States, you'd want to look at that. Or if you're considering going into international markets, you definitely, you're at a point where you want to start, being serious about your trademarks, things like that. But a really good and often overlooked service, for a lot of, especially for a lot of new businesses, would be like a comprehensive trademark search. And what that is it makes sure that you're kind of steering clear of maybe somebody else's registered trademark, right? So even if you don't register your own trademark, you want to make sure that you're not, stepping on anybody else's rights, right? And so something like that, you want to know, are you safe to use this trademark, or if you're gonna, if you're running into some, risking somebody coming after you down the road. So we help business owners with those types of services in the realm of trademarks. We can also counsel on copyright issues, right? Especially with the internet and digital age. Everybody's producing massive amounts of content, right? They're going up on the internet. So there's blog posts, video content, YouTube channels, ebooks, all of these creative works fall under copyright, right? And so there are certain, aspects of copyright law that you want to make sure that you're handling properly, right? So you know what to expect if somebody, comes along and they're using your content, or what sorts of content that you can repurpose in your own ways, things like that. So copyright counseling, and then just general business and intellectual property counseling for those business owners that are looking for a long-term relationship where they have an open line of communication. If they have some sort of legal question come up, they have somebody that they they can reach out to and get a quick answer to their question. So
Okay.
those are some of kind of the core services we're helping our clients with at the moment.
Awesome. Now, where can they find you online or on social media?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm really active like on LinkedIn and even Facebook. The firm, so my business is called Lockhart IP. So I've got pages on both LinkedIn and Facebook that they can reach out to. Or me personally, I respond to people personally if they want to reach out and message me. My firm, the URL for my website is usipconsulting.com. So you can reach out there, and even direct email is a good way to reach me. I'm pretty quick at responding to that. So if you wanted to email at Curt, so CURT at usipconsulting.com would be a good way to reach me as well.
Awesome. Now, when you mentioned about copyright, because I think that is with the number of, companies and businesses that are using kind of the content marketing strategy. Have you seen any areas there where companies have, I guess you say, unknowingly gotten themselves into trouble when it comes down to content marketing and the content that they put out or the content that they reshare?
Yeah, and it's a complicated. It's almost like the Wild West all over again with the internet and policies and things like that. The hard part about the law is it's always way slower than society at trying to catch up with things, right? And so it can be a challenge for sure. A lot of people just don't. And for the vast majority of people, it's innocent. They don't really mean any, they're not trying to steal people's content or any harm. They just don't know, right? What they can use. And I get questions all the time, can I use this? Can I do this? Is this, am I getting in trouble for this? As far as using other people's content. And it really comes down to, if you're going to err on the side of whether or not you can use something, you're almost always better off reaching out to the owner of the content, right? And just saying, hey, this is what I want to use it for. Would that be okay, right? And at least opening that line of communication. Because if you don't open the line of communication, that's just the number one step, right? If you just use it and you don't, just assuming that it's okay, then you open yourself up to the owner of the content not being okay with it, right? Whereas if you just reach out and you say, hey, this is what I'm thinking, what do you think? Then all of a sudden you can work with them and figure something out. But for the most part, those are some of the issues I see that are pretty common as far as copyright and content marketing.
Awesome. Now, before we wrap up, one question I like to ask all the guests that come on, when you think about, your expertise and kind of your background, what would be, one or two pieces of wisdom that you would share with entrepreneurs to say, hey, this is something important for you to keep in mind as you're trying to build your business?
Yeah, definitely. So, something that I like to tell entrepreneurs, a couple things in relation to legal help and things like that, but a really solid legal foundation for a brand new entrepreneur that's just starting a business. You really want to focus on three areas that you want to kind of get right. And the first is, your business entity, right? So a lot of people hear about, LLCs and sole proprietorships, and they're, trying to figure out corporations, what do I need, in that regard. And so that's kind of your main areas. You want to focus on getting that business entity structured properly. And then second would be your intellectual property, right? You want to make sure not only is your intellectual property protected, but that we talked about, you're not, running into issues with other people's IP. And then the third one would be contracts. And the contracts are a big one that they're often overlooked. And a lot of people view them as something that's kind of a burden. I don't want to sign a contract because, that's a hassle, right? But the reality is, they're in place to protect not only you, but the other party. And a lot of times people don't consider that. And so what it really does is it sets the expectation. So everybody knows going into it, this is what we agree on. This is kind of what to expect from each party. And then, so you can make sure that you're meeting those expectations. So you really want to have contracts for, any sort of transaction you do with another person, right? So those are kind of the three core foundations or kind of a legal, pillars of a legal foundation that you want to get right for a new business.
Awesome. Well, Curt, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your perspective and sharing, your wisdom and insight, because I do think that making sure that the legal side of your business is intact is probably one of those commonly overlooked things by a lot of new entrepreneurs. Like you said, they either feel like, hey, I don't have a lot of money to invest in that, but it's just like, this will definitely protect your business in the long run.
Yeah. Sometimes I compare it to almost like preventative healthcare, but for your business. You know how you go to the doctor regularly to make sure that you're getting checked up and that you don't have a huge health concern down the road. It's really similar for your business. If you make sure everything's running smoothly from the start, and you're just making sure to do regular checkups on how things are going in your business from a legal standpoint, it drastically reduces your risk of running into some sort of, catastrophic financial, legal obligation that you got to meet somewhere down the road that just can destroy your business, right? So.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you for coming on the show, and thank you for sharing your insight, Curt.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me. It was great to talk to you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Business Talk Library. If you like what you heard and you want to hear more, be sure to click the subscribe button and follow us on all social media platforms as the Business Talk Library.